Welcome back to the show, Business Mastery for Startups, Scale-Ups, and Early Stage Businesses with your host, Jerry Gadori. That's me. And this week we've got Jennifer Christensen, the founder, or maybe was it co-founder?
Co-founder, you got it. Yep.
Sorry, co-founder of Beacon Media and Marketing, based out of Alaska, though she works nationally. A rock star in the space. I know that was kind of light by way of introductions. Jennifer, could you expand on it a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, co-founder. So Adrian Wilkerson, my co-founder, and we started this 13 years ago. Like you said, in Anchorage, Alaska, we had a vision. We were the first to market in the digital space in Alaska. And then about 6 years ago, we took a massive leap and said, we believe we can go national with this. And that was a really big changing point for us. It was a proof that even from a small market, you can be successful in a larger one. We niched down into the mental health space and healthcare wellness space. So we really focused in on what we were doing well, and we've been able to replicate that. We have hundreds of clients now across the U.S., and we are Inc. 5000 2 years in a row. I guess 3 years this year. So we've been growing very rapidly the last 3 years, and it's been quite the ride.
I can imagine so, and I'll tell you, there's a couple things I'd love to dig into that you mentioned there. Number one, I couldn't agree more. In today's day and age, you can start a company anywhere if
Right.
you've got the right solution for the right problem presented correctly. You
Yeah.
can rock. And number two, niching. I'll tell you, that's one of the larger mistakes I see when I'm consulting with companies is
Agreed.
that a small company will try to represent to large companies that they can do everything. And even in the rare instance it's actually true, and spoiler alert, they're rare, but even the rare instance when it's true, it's not a believable thing. So those
Right.
companies you have no credibility with them. Whereas
Right.
if you say we're a 10-person team, we do this better than anybody else in the world, this is what we're rock stars in, that's a believable story, and that big company buys.
Yeah. I love that. That completely goes along with what we thought at the time and has definitely rang true for us. We've been able to get deals with companies that are 10 times our size because of that. And that's something I
Mhm.
think companies don't realize is most people want to do business with people that fully understand who they are. How are you going to do that in 15 different industries? It's just not possible. I mean, unless, like you said, you've got a huge company doing that. But I will say this, back to that decision, that was a terrifying decision because when we
Heck
were in
yes.
Alaska, we had to serve, businesses here, small business retail, larger business telecom. I mean, it's a small market, so you don't have much of a choice to do that. So that was a huge leap, but I'm so glad we did it.
I work predominantly in technology services, and it's interesting that you say that. One of the rules that we applied is the more general you are, the smaller physical area that you can serve. The more niched you are, the larger geographic area you could serve.
You nailed it.
Because if, for example, a technology staffing company,
Right.
and I'm in Boston, I can believably say to a Boston client, I can solve all your Boston technology staffing
Right.
concerns because I built a massive network here. But if I say to a company, I can solve all your global concerns in any area of technology,
Right.
that's a ridiculous statement. So that's a great
It
thing.
is.
And it's interesting too to hear you say that because you mentioned the rapid growth in the Fortune 5000. In my experience, and based on things you said, it sounds like you're on board with this. Um, that means that you're growing as a leader because as the founder of a company, if you're not growing, in my lived experience, companies don't outgrow their leaders. Um, if you're not growing personally, your company stagnates. And I can't imagine a company that went from small everybody marketing in Alaska to a Fortune 5000 player in the marketing for mental health concerns nationally. I can't imagine that didn't come with a ton of growth.
So definitely, I mean, I've always been, thank you for that. I completely agree. That's something that I've known for a long time. Even when we first merged together, my business partner had a bigger vision than I did. I was happy doing mainly more, straight the marketing part of it. I just wanted to do great work. Like that's what makes me happy. I love doing great work, providing value for clients. At the end of the day, big or small, like that is what drives me. But there became this point where we decided to expand, and I realized, okay, that thinking has to change. And if I want to continue with this, I need to change my thinking on this. Do I want to change my thinking? I think that's the first question. Do I really want to do this?
Yes.
And then the question I asked myself is, would I hire myself to be a CMO, CIO? I do both positions. Would I hire myself for the company that we want to become? And the answer was no. I would definitely not hire myself. I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the belief. I didn't have the education. It was all small. I mean, I have education, but it was, for that local market. And so I've spent the last 5 years completely growing, pursuing, educating, having mentors, becoming somebody that I'm really confident in what I do. And actually, interestingly enough, I like myself more. You find out you're capable of so much more than you thought you were. And it's been an incredible process. That's probably my favorite thing actually about being a leader. Growing a company, being an entrepreneur, there are so many ups and downs. You can have 5 a day. You can have 5 highlights in a day, and then you can have 5, oh, we're terrible in a day. And you have to be able to work with that flexibility. But I think my favorite part of this entire process has been who I've grown into becoming, and to be proud of that. And now the next question is, am I going to continue to keep hiring myself, to keep moving up that leadership level? As we talked about earlier, the market is so disrupted right now on every level. I'm having to basically dig completely deep down to the core of our beliefs and our structure, and even restructure now with AI. So we're having to go through the whole thing all over again that we did, 5 years ago.
No, and I'll tell you, we were kind of moving on to leadership, and when a market is disrupted, when things are in a state of flux and change, that's when leadership is most important. I'll tell you again, in my experience working with hundreds of companies, when someone doesn't know what's going on, they tend to fill in the ugliest possible story. It seems to be human nature. So as a leader, if you're not aware of these disruptions, what probably feels to you like over communicating with your team, then their morale is probably falling faster than a rock.
Yeah. No, we made some missteps last year in that we did see it coming. But in fact, I've been involved in AI for the last 3 years. So I was a pretty early adopter, speaking at it, telling people this is what I think is coming, this is what I believe. And it's even been more than what people thought I was overshooting it. And now we've seen it's even become more. But we made a mistake last year in that very thing, and that we, had all this information. We were taking it as leaders. We were deciding, okay, what do we want to do with this? How do we want to move forward? And we've always been a very transparent company. So we share like our quarterly numbers with all of our team. We share everything with them. They know exactly where we're at. But we didn't over communicate fast enough. That, we just gave them general principles. And the truth is, because we didn't quite know how this was going to shake out. We hadn't really decided which direction are we taking. Are we going all in on AI? Are we using it somewhat? Like, what is that? We were struggling to find our position, which made it difficult to even communicate to them. But looking back on it, I think if we had just communicated even that to them, it would have been better. Over communication,
Yeah,
like you said, transparency, it's better. Hey, we're all in this together. Where like the beginning of this year, I was able to very clearly say to our staff, okay, we have a belief that we are going to do everything we can to keep everyone's jobs here. We are going to retool our company and train everyone to have all these advantages. And then we're going to grow our company so that we can stay competitive. And that's been great.
yeah, I do a lot of change management with my clients because we do a lot of process implementation for them. And the thing that throws leaders the most is just how much communication is expected and for how long. So a lot of folks get hung up on breaking bad habits. And at least in business, I've explained to them, nobody breaks a habit. They replace it with a new one. So when we
Absolutely.
change something in a team's workflow, we've got to communicate, work, train, and supervise them until the new thing becomes the old thing. And the
Right.
old thing is gone. And if you stop before that, the old thing slides back. It's one
I
of the
have seen
reasons why
that.
training so often fails. Yeah.
Yeah, I have
And
absolutely
it's,
seen
it's one of the reasons. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. We've got a
that. No,
little
no, go
bit of a
ahead.
lag. But that's one of the main reasons why training fails is because training is behavioral management. Training is a disruption in workflow. Folks don't recognize it for that. And even if the team comes in with the best of intentions to learn the new thing, which alas is not a universal truth, but even if they do, the old habit is the old habit. So they come out of the training gangbusters, they start doing the new thing, something gets hard, something goes wrong, they go back to the old thing just to get through this problem, and then the old thing takes over again.
I have seen that multiple times. We use a tool called Predictive Index. I'm sure you're familiar with that
Mm-hmm.
one. One of the reasons we actually started using that is because you know, again, back to the leadership, knowing who you are, developing and growing as your business grows. Like to me, self awareness and emotional intelligence are the most important components to being able to be a leader. Doesn't
Yes.
guarantee success, but it certainly gives you a good foundation. So what we recognized is, okay, we are in a company, this is even before AI, we're in a company in a digital marketing space that is changing literally all the time. The algorithms change, everything, and so you put processes in place and then you have to reinvent them. And then you have to keep moving and constantly keep up with being the best in market. And so we recognize this is who we are. We can't change this. We own this. And so using predictive index in our hiring allows us to hire people that isn't going to kill their soul, but that they actually like flexibility. They like change. They work with that well. Even with all that we've done, where we've chosen a team that is into that, we still struggle because we're human. You spend your time doing things this way. I do the same thing, and then to change it completely, your entire brain has to stretch in a new way. So I agree with that.
No, I completely hear you on that. And you mentioned another thing that's interesting: digital marketing, staffing firms. Those are low barrier of entry companies. And when you lead organizations like that, it's incumbent on you to make sure that your signal is rising above the noise because there's so many companies in that space. And I hate to be rude, but
It's
they're
true.
pure garbage. They don't add value. They don't bring anything to the table. They use shady sales tactics. They're just difficult. So if you are in that space, and obviously you're not one of those companies, it takes incredible leadership and focus to rise above that. The one thing I'd add to the list, your very good list, is integrity, because
Yeah.
when you demonstrate integrity in your actions, it's a natural differentiator. People know that you're a rock that they can build on, and that gives you, crazily, it gives you more opportunities than somebody who doesn't, because when something goes wrong, they know that you're honest. They give you the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm. We stay right in our sales process. We actually just implemented this recently. We've always said it before, though, that there will be mistakes. There will be things that go wrong.
Yes,
It's not a question of if, it's when. And so obviously we're putting that out there right up front. And what we've recently implemented is actually a plan of, okay, when something does go wrong, one way or the other, let's talk through what our plan is of how we communicate through that. And
100%.
and Adrian and I have had this conversation over the years so many times, where we have felt like over the years, we always give in. We're always, owning stuff and then giving money back, or somebody else says they can do something. We know that's not true. We end up losing the sale, and that can hurt a lot over a period of time when you see that kind of thing happening over and over again, and it feels like you're losing. Um, but I would say in the last 3 years, it's shown to me that is the only way to win long term. It's the only way. You may win in the short term. It's very frustrating to me that in our industry, and it sounds like with yours too, that people can say exactly the same thing and have it mean completely different things depending on their level of integrity. And that's really what it comes down to. If you say you're doing
100%.
this, oh, yeah, very frustrating.
People just don't seem to understand the lower the barrier of entry. That's not a positive. That's one of the things that I think people haven't thought all the way through with AI. The easier AI makes things for people, which, general net win, that means that less qualified people can do that work. Again, net win. But when that person is making promises, how much of that work is real? I the one non-negotiable I have is integrity. I tell people that in the interview. So in the interview, when I'm looking to hire people for my team, there's a number of things that we talk about, and one is integrity. If I were interviewing you, Jennifer, I'd say something along the lines of, I expect in the length of our relationship, you're going to make mistakes. Some of them are probably going to be whoppers. The probability is we'll figure a way to work through it. But if I find you less than truthful, if you work with my clients in a way that's not acceptable, that will be the end of the relationship.
Right. Yeah. We had one the other day. Oh my gosh, a couple months ago. And the site didn't get indexed by Google. It was just a really terrible mistake that we never make, but we made it. And the client didn't know. So we could have just fixed it and not told the client. We could have done that. We didn't do that. We went to the client, let them know, like, this is why your traffic's been down. Like, it only happened for like a week, but still it matters. And it was totally our fault. And the client came back. The email that came back was so incredible. They were like, this is why I know we hired the right company. I mean, I expected we could have been fired.
But what's beautiful about that, Jennifer, and I'm glad it worked out your way. I've had a similar experience several times in my career. You said it beautifully a few minutes ago. It's not an if, it's a when. During the course of a business relationship, mistakes are going to happen. It's not that a mistake happens. It's what you do with the mistake. What do you do to make it right? And in my experience, in nearly every one of those circumstances, when they see that we did everything we could to make it right, the relationship comes out the other end stronger than had that never happened. That's one of the things that's challenging with a business relationship, is that you hit it on the head, Jennifer. It's not an if, it's a when. And in my experience, it's what you do when it goes wrong that really tells you how it's going to work out. What have you seen?
Absolutely. I mean, most of the time it becomes a net win. I would say actually every client that we've had, and we've had some for 6, 7, 10, 10 years, there has always been this moment of truth, I will call it. So it doesn't mean it has to be some big mistake, but it's, at some point, 10 years in a relationship, we got a little off from each other. We're like doing this marketing over here. We're thinking we're meeting their goals. They come back maybe 6 months later. Well, oh no, that's not really what we were trying to do. We actually want you to do this. That can be that point that's a breaking, right? So it doesn't even have to be a mistake. It can be, does one party feel like they're not communicating well? Is it we're just slightly off on the business? The business goals change dramatically. Any of those things I kind of put in that same category. But if you work through that, if you have integrity, you work through that, you're humble, like, hey, what can I learn from that so we don't go through this again? Because we care about you. Like, you're so important to us. We want to have this relationship. If you're humble, most of those come out stronger. Actually, all of them. I can think of every single one come out stronger. Or you hit a point where you realize, okay, we're actually not the best for each other at this point. And that should end well. That should end well. Yes. It should be, okay, you've moved on. In fact, we had a client, our largest client 2 years ago, we actually let go, which was, like my stomach hurts just thinking about it. But we thought about it for a couple months, and we realized their direction of business was going in a place that we as a company could not sustain. And
Hmm.
we, of course, we wanted to keep this client and work with this client. This is a great client. We had him for a number of years, but they were literally going into an area that wasn't our expertise. So it was going to completely, we would have had to completely change our company to fit them. And then I'm not confident that we would have been, I know we would not have been the best at what they actually needed. So we ended up parting in really good ways. 3 months took to wind everything down. We helped them find the new agencies to work with, and then we still work with them in all these other capacities. To me, that's a win because
It's an
the
incredible
negative,
demonstration of integrity.
well, the negative would have been they would have ended up firing us. It would have been
Hmm.
terrible. We wouldn't have been meeting their needs, and it just all the way across the board that would have been a very negative situation. Now it's very positive.
That's a beautiful. That's a beautiful example of leadership. You demonstrated integrity by putting your client first, and the outcome was a positive separation in that area, maintenance of work in the others. Whereas
Yeah.
the inverse probably would have been a couple more months of doing okay, followed by a
Mm-hmm.
couple months of falling on your face, burning the relationship, and
Right.
you separate acrimoniously. It's a great
Yeah.
example of again integrity being a critical part of leadership. It makes me wonder if you could talk to any business owner in the world, any small business owner, any founder, any early stage leader, what one piece of advice do you think that you give them, Jennifer?
And the number one piece of advice that I would give is that your business will never outgrow you personally unless you turn it over or sell it to somebody else, which maybe if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But if you're really in to grow a business, every issue that you have concerning fear, concerning lack of money, a mindset of poverty versus abundance, even faith in a more positive way of like how the world works, that there's opportunities for you around all of those things. If you don't work on yourself, growing the business, I'm not going to say for sure it will fail, but I haven't seen an instance yet where I've met somebody that has not done that their business has not grown and succeeded and done well. I've also met other people, and I think we can think of this too, where it's very obvious that the business completely stagnated and stopped at a certain point and has never grown past it because the owner did not. And it feels very, when I first really got this concept, it felt like I had no time for that. I had to do therapy. I had to do, like I said, educate, take classes at Harvard. I didn't have to go there, but I wanted to do that. I had to get a mentor, go through, read a ton of books, listen and to different opinions and learn from people that have gone ahead of me and done it really, really well. I mean, that's been part of my path, and then part of that through that whole thing is radical honesty with yourself. Radical honesty, like self awareness, honesty. I know who I am. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. That's great. Like just own who you are and be okay with that. Um, that's that's the part that I would give. I think that comes out of the all the process of what I went through, and I think many owners should.
Yeah, I can think of, first of all, completely agree. I can think of several examples that you've described. Companies I've worked with that have been stuck at $5 million in revenue for years. And the reason is the owner. I had one company that I know of, and I think it's a great example of what you were talking about. That the owner started the company as a software developer, started the company kind of I don't want to say on a lark, but as at most the side hustles before they were called side hustles to put some of
Right.
his developer friends to work. Pretty rapidly grew it to about 6 or 7 million in revenue, and realized he really didn't like running a business, and he
Right.
really didn't feel he had the skills, and he didn't want to invest his energy in it. Fast forward 15 years, and he sold that company for $100 million. Why? Because he hired professional leadership to take over where
Yeah.
his willingness to grow in that area ended. It's such
Right.
a study in what you talked about.
I love that. I think, and I've definitely questioned that multiple times. I mean, the question I told you earlier that I asked myself, that is an ongoing question. And it's very possible there will hit a point where I say, you know what, it's time, for somebody else to take this to the next level. And that's okay. That's the honesty part. I think there's so
Yeah,
many lies about small business. There's so many lies about, this is just somehow your idea is what makes the difference. And it's really not. It's the execution of the idea and the people that you
100%. Oh
have
my
running
gosh.
it. And people talk about ideas like that's everything. Like, no, no, the ideas are not too hard to come by anymore, unless you're like putting rockets on Mars, right? That might be a little bit different, but that's not
I'd
what we're
argue
talking
even
about.
then. I'd
Yeah.
argue even then. Yeah, no,
Would
you're
you
right.
really?
It's all about the execution. Huh?
Right. You'd argue
Yeah,
the rocket idea. Yeah. I guess there's multiple people with
it's
the same idea, right?
yeah, yeah, gosh, Bezos,
Right.
Musk, there's several. But circling back to one last thing, I think we should probably wrap up on that
Sure.
thought. But one thing you mentioned there about telling about being true to yourself, you might get to a point where the company is a size you're comfortable with, you're making the money that you want to make, and you're not ready to sell, and you knowingly sit at that space. There's no
Right.
shame in that either. I've got a very
Absolutely.
good friend. Yeah, I've got a very good friend and mentor. He spent 30 years working for the same company. He's the person who taught me direct hire recruiting many years ago. He got fed up with that company, left, started his own company. He's the only employee. He works all on his own. And we were talking the other day. We go out for Indian food once a quarter just to catch up. And he's like, I know you're building a business, Jerry. And I know that when I'm done working, I'm just basically shutting it down. And I'm okay with that. He's earning more money than he needs. He's happy. There's no shame in that. Just be honest with yourself and do what you feel is right.
And I think, at least, I don't know if it's a female, I don't know where this comes from, but this feeling that you feel like you have to be somewhere to impress other people or to say that you've succeeded, like what you just described with that gentleman, that's huge success. Like,
Yeah,
he created something that fits his life, that's providing a great value or service. That's huge success. A lot of businesses can be, multi-million dollar businesses and not be achieving any of those things. They're not giving the same
100%
value.
agree.
The owners aren't happy. Like, nobody's getting what they need. So that's great.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, one of the things I see often in companies that have that toxic culture is that the owner is dissatisfied, and more often than not, irrespective of what they say, the problem lies in the mirror. They're dissatisfied because they know they're doing something wrong. But
Yeah,
I'm going to stop there. Clearly,
absolutely.
if you let me, we'll talk all night. Let me ask you this, Jennifer. If folks want to learn more about you and about Beacon Media, how can they find you?
I think three main ways. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. So Jennifer Christensen on LinkedIn, just look me up. Beacon Media and Marketing, beaconmm.com. And then we have the Beacon Way podcast, which I'm going to hopefully get you to come chat with me too, Jared. I'd really like that.
I would
Some
love
great
to be on
discussion.
your show.
Yeah. Thank
Awesome.
you.
And I'd love to have you back another time. So first of all, thank you very much. Any long-term listeners catching this, all of those links will be in the show notes. Anybody who's listening for the first time, now you know as well. Until next week, continue being awesome and building the types of companies that are the engine that drives the world. Thank you very much. Goodbye, Jennifer.
Bye. Thank you.